So let's talk about APIs for product managers, right? This is another topic that I feel I want to touch on in this course, right? And I want to, make it as simple as possible, right? Because I see that this is another thing that is quite challenging for product managers, especially in recent times, right? So APIs. What are APIs? API, also known as Programming Interface, is more like a mechanism for systems, right, or applications to communicate with each other, right? So, take for instance, when you use Jumia, right, you are able to make payments using, say, Paystack, right? Paystack is a solution on its own. Paystack is a separate company. Jumia is a separate company. But how is it that you, as a Jumia user, can make payments with Paystack, right? It is not like Paystack acquired, or it's not like Jumia acquired Paystack or vice versa. What makes this possible is APIs, right? So Jumia must have, or Paystack must have exposed some part of their APIs, which is receiving payments, right? And Jumia must have picked that up, consumed it in such a way that they are now able to serve you as a customer better, right? So, put simply, again, API is a mechanism, right, for systems or applications to communicate with each other. Now, under APIs, there are other interesting things to discuss, and the first would be the types of APIs. So there are two main types of APIs: external APIs and internal APIs, right? External API, simply put, are the type of APIs that are exposed for other organizations, that is not yourself or your company, to consume, right? So take for instance, back to our Jumia and Paystack example. So Jumia, Paystack has exposed some sort of external APIs, which Jumia is then able to consume to serve you better. So these are good for integrations, they are good for partnerships between companies. Now, the second part is internal APIs. So these are the type of APIs that, are, like the word implies, internal, right? So they are only made available for internal teams to use. So take for instance a company that has 2 to 3 products, right? But they have maybe a dashboard, right, that ties the 3 products together, right? So if you are using product A, you have a dashboard which serves you in product B and product C, right? That team, such team, can open up their APIs internally for themselves to, consume them. Another thing is, say, maybe AI models, right? So internal teams can, open up APIs for specific features that other teams can then consume, right? So take for instance, again, Meta has Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, right? WhatsApp can open up APIs which Facebook and then Instagram can consume, right? So those are the two main types of API, right? So the next interesting thing to talk about under APIs is, or are, API components and authentication. Now, what are API components? There are 3 major API components. The first is the endpoint, the second is the request or response, and the third is HTTP method, right? So the endpoint is the particular URL where the API is available. So I want you to do something quickly. Just type Paystack API documentation on Google, right? And then you see something called URL, right, or endpoint. So this is the URL where the API is available. This is what you call to be able to then access their APIs. The second thing we said we're going to talk about is response and request. So each APIs or endpoints have specific parameters. There's something called parameters. So this is like the language, or let's say sentence structures. I think that's a better use of word. Sentence structures that they are expecting, right? So what are the things that you impute? What is the outputs that you get, right? So what are the things that you impute? What are the things the API, the system is expecting you to put in, and what will be their response to you? So a request can be something like fetch. This is just a random example, but a request can be something like fetch all customers, and then the response can be something like a list of all the customers that you have on the system. Now, the third thing I'm going to talk about under the under API component is HTTP method, right? So there are about 4 HTTP methods. So get, post, put, delete. Those are the types of HTTP methods that we have under APIs, right? They are not ambiguous words. The get API is used to retrieve data. The post is used to post data, maybe post a customer's name, right? Put is used to edit or patch, right? To edit or patch data, and then delete is used to delete data. So those are the types of HTTP methods that we have. Now, the second thing that I said I was going to talk about is authentication, right? API authentication. So there's something called API keys. So this is usually unique to individual accounts, right? So if you check, say your ChatGPT, for instance, the API doc, you'd see that you have access to API keys. This is unique, right, to individual accounts, to individual customer. Everything around your account is tied to an API key, which can then be called to fetch data. So take, for instance, again, Jumia, right? Jumia has integrated with Paystack, right? But then when doing that integration, Jumia must have created an account, right, with Paystack, used their API key to connect, right, to authenticate, and to make sure that the data that they will get from Paystack is the one particular to their own account, right? So that is that on API component and API authentication. So the next thing I'll walk you through now is how to create API stories, right, as a product manager. Because truth be told, you will have to create API stories as a PM, right? This might not come now, it might come later, really, because for me, I've worked in companies where I didn't have to create it, and I've worked in companies where I had to create it, especially software as a service solutions. You have to create API stories, and this is because your system would definitely interface with other systems, and also SaaS solutions and even fintechs try to open up their APIs for people to use, right, or people to consume, right? So how do you create API stories? I have a simple format I use. The first I use is the API title. So let's say an instance of this is create customer. Then we do the endpoints. This would then be the URL where, again, the API is accessible, right? Then I put the body parameter compulsory. So this is the body parameter that we expect that every point in time a user must put. So this might be email, customer ID, and whatnot. Then body parameters optional. So even if the customer did not put this, we will still give a response to the API call. Then the last thing I then put is response. So when the parameter is properly put, what response do you get? Might be just a simple text to say customer successfully added when you use the create customer endpoint, or might be a list or a table containing all of the customer's data if you use a fetch customer endpoint. So with that, I think we've come to the end of APIs for product managers.